All right, let's dive right in today. We're going deep on a commentary, Liberals Ruin Everything. It's by Hunter Avallone. You guys shared it, and we're going to break it down, see what he's saying, how he says it, and, figure out how this all fits into, well, everything.
Yeah, Avalon's interesting, you know. He uses humor and a lot of, I'd say, pointed critique to talk about, liberal ideas today. And his main argument, well, it's right there in the title, isn't it? He's saying liberals are so focused on pushing their agenda, they actually end up messing things up.
He really goes all over the place, huh? Rap music, Thanksgiving dinner, you name it. It's like he's trying to show this liberal ruin is everywhere we look. But by covering so much, does he maybe oversimplify things?
That's the question, isn't it? It's fun, it makes you think, but yeah, we got to watch for that. Maybe we start with one of his stronger examples, the Privilege Bridge rap video for kids.
Oh, yeah. The one where he's making fun of the lyrics, and I think he was joking about their, like, lip gloss or something. He even says the only lesson kids will learn is to stay away from cocaine.
Yeah.
Hmm. It's definitely wild, but what's he really saying there?
It's satire, right. He's using it to kind of show what he sees as the problems with some ways liberals approach education, like making fun of the rapping, the way they explain privilege. Like it's simple, almost like they're trying to, indoctrinate kids. It's like he's asking, is this really the best way to teach kids about these really complicated issues?
Makes you think about how we get young people talking about social justice and equality, huh? So then there's also that video game thing. He goes after a study about diversity in games and how the lack of it is linked to, like, actual racism.
Yeah, he tears into that study, makes fun of how many people they actually studied, even suggests that players getting upset about not seeing themselves in games, maybe they have other issues. Then he throws out ideas like customizable characters, but like even predicts people calling it digital blackface, and you can tell he's not being serious.
So he's using humor again to point out what he sees as, I don't know, contradictions maybe. Like all this effort for diversity ends up backfiring somehow.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how he shows liberals' attempts as kind of self-defeating. Like that whole pink tax thing, remember? He just throws it out, calls it a feminist myth.
He uses razors and dry cleaning to say it's all just supply and demand, right? Even says women can just buy men's stuffs they don't like the price.
Right.
But like, come on, there's more to it than just that.
Right. And that kind of highlights a problem I see in a lot of what Avallone says. He doesn't really deal with the, like, systemic stuff, the cultural things that contribute to inequality. It's always individual choice and the market. But these are complicated issues.
Speaking of complicated, he goes right for Thanksgiving dinner, specifically an article that says you should call out your racist relatives at the table.
Oh, yeah, that one's a good example of how he takes on opposing views. And it ain't pretty. He goes after the author personally, even makes fun of her looks and job. Then he just throws out the whole idea of talking about racism with family, says it'll just cause a fight.
Paints a picture of, Thanksgiving dinner just exploding, right? But it's like, maybe there's room for a real conversation there.
That's the thing. This kind of talk just divides people more. It's always us versus them, makes it even harder to talk about sensitive things.
And we can't forget that whole cancel culture bit, the one with the Minecraft guy, Notch, who got kicked out of some event because of his tweets.
Right, right. That one really shows us what he thinks about free speech and what happens when you say the wrong thing. He slams Microsoft for doing it, says it's a slippery slope, says they're actually hurting inclusivity in gaming by doing this.
So he's all for hearing different opinions, even ones that might offend people. Where's the line then? When does free speech go too far and you need to protect people?
That's the age-old question, isn't it? But he's making us think about it, even if he's being a little, well, provocative. One thing that really jumps out is how Avallone uses language,
Right.
Like really strong words, vivid images, that kind of thing. It's not just what he says, it's how he says it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't hold back. It's like jabs, And he makes these crazy comparisons to really get his point across, almost like he wants you to, like, feel it,
Yeah, like that part about political ads. He picks apart this ad by a progressive candidate, Rich Madaleno, I think it was, goes after his stance on Planned Parenthood, gun control, all that.
But he didn't just stop at the policies, right? It felt like he was attacking the guy, like how he looks, even saying he was using kids as props or something.
Yeah, yeah. He does that to make the candidate seem fake, less trustworthy. And it plays on people's emotions. Happens all the time in politics, and Avalon's using it to show how he thinks the left manipulates people.
And he keeps going, right? Picks on another ad, this one with that billionaire Tom Steyer, the one who was all about impeaching Trump. And again, uses humor to kind of tear it down.
Exactly.
Hmm.
He makes fun of Steyer being rich, like he's out of touch, even makes fun of his voice. Like it's all this calculated act to trick people.
And then, oh man, he makes his own fake political ad, like in the same style as the ones he just ripped apart. It's hilarious, but it also makes you think about how much emotion plays into these messages, you know?
Totally. It's like, hey, be careful what you believe, especially in politics. Avalon's saying, look deeper, think about why they're saying it, you know?
Right.
What's their agenda?
So then he goes from ads to, get this, the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
Says liberals are like taking over this American holiday and turning it into something anti-American.
It's a window into his worldview, you know? Like he really believes these liberal ideas are attacking American values and traditions. Starts by making fun of that protester who climbed the Statue of Liberty on Independence Day, saying she caused a scene and nobody heard her message.
Then he goes after social media posts, people saying bad things about America,
Yeah.
saying liberals are using the holiday to bash the country instead of celebrating it. Like being liberal means you can't be patriotic.
It's pretty extreme, right? He criticizes people talking about slavery and all the bad stuff, saying we should focus on freedom and all that. Even people talking about border control, he says they're, what was it, undermining national sovereignty.
Yeah, a very particular way of looking at history and patriotism, that's for sure. Picks and chooses what to celebrate, glosses over the rest.
Shows you that tension, right? Acknowledging the bad stuff, but still celebrating the good stuff. Avalon's all about the celebration of the good parts. Doesn't really dwell on the negative.
And from fireworks and all that, he jumps to, wait for it, feminist slam poetry, analyzing this poem called Dear Girl.
Gives you a sense of what he thinks about gender and social justice, right? He mocks the whole performance, the rhymes, the message, especially that whole thing about women being victims. Says it's just pushing this idea that women are helpless and need saving.
And he really goes after that believe survivors line. Says it's being used to push an agenda, not actually help people. Specifically calls out the part about the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. Says they're mixing up false accusations with real trauma.
Man, that's a touchy subject, isn't it? How do you support survivors but also make sure the accused is treated fairly?
Avalon seems to be saying the hashtag #MeToo movement went too far, that people believe accusations without any proof.
Yeah, it's like he's worried about rushing to judgment, that people are being punished before they're proven guilty, especially men. It's a common feeling for guys who think they're being unfairly targeted because of hashtag #MeToo.
And then, this is either really dark humor or just offensive, he comes up with this fake ad for a video game called Transgender Fun Run.
Yeah, this is where that shock humor really comes out. He says the game lets you experience all the everyday transphobia and racism of being a black transgender prostitute.
It's a lot, that's for sure. What's the point even?
I think he's trying to be satirical, making fun of what he sees as too much focus on identity. You know, like it's gone too far and we've forgotten about just being people.
It's an idea that some people really connect with, They feel like all this identity stuff is dividing everyone, making us focus on our differences instead of what we have in common.
And it goes back to his whole point about liberals being obsessed with identity and creating a culture of victimhood, right?
And to drive it home, he comes up with another fake game, tampon toss. Yeah. Again, using humor to show how he thinks they're making light of serious issues by focusing on identity.
Crude, yeah. But it gets a reaction, gets people talking.
Right.
Whether you think it's funny or offensive, it shows how frustrated he is with all this focus on identity.
From video games, he goes to, of all things, college, specifically a course called Angry White Male Studies.
Yeah, that one really sums up how he sees liberal ideas taking over schools. He makes fun of the name, the professor, everything.
He's like, how can you study white male anger? What a joke. Says it's just self-hatred, and because society's always putting down white men. That's something a lot of guys agree with, They feel like they're the target in schools and in these social justice movements.
Right, and he doesn't like how the class focuses on the impact of social justice on white men. Says it's just dividing everyone, making things worse. It's a worry about politics taking over education.
And he's so sarcastic, joking that anyone who takes this class must be so dumb their parents had to bribe the college to let them in.
He's not holding back there.
Oh.
Shows you how much he distrusts schools, thinks they're just pushing liberal ideas and shutting down everything else. It's like he wants schools to be fair, to consider everyone, not just one side.
A lot of people feel that way, That colleges are too focused on social justice and have forgotten about teaching people how to think for themselves.
It does make you wonder, though, can you really have open discussions and debate in a place where everyone thinks the same way?
So from college, He circles back to that article about the Asian woman with the white fiancé.
And here he goes again, attacking what he sees as liberal hypocrisy about race and dating. Makes fun of her worry about her fiancé maybe having an Asian fetish, saying she's letting her own issues control the relationship instead of judging him based on who he is.
And get this, he even says she's doing blackface by getting a tan to feel more comfortable at a, like, woke church. Talk about insensitive, right? Doesn't even consider what it's like to be a minority, especially in an interracial relationship.
It's like he thinks she's just trying to fit in with these progressive ideas, not because her partner's actually treating her badly.
And he criticizes her for worrying about how their relationship looks to other people,
Yeah.
saying it's all in her head and takes away from their connection.
This gets to the heart of it, right? How much should race matter in a relationship? Is it about the two people or about the bigger picture?
Avalon seems to be saying love shouldn't see color, that focusing on race just divides people and takes away from what really matters. Character and if you're compatible.
It sounds good, right? But it ignores all the racism and biases that affect how people see each other and how relationships actually work.
So wrapping up this part of our deep dive, it's obvious Avalon isn't afraid to get into controversial topics, uses humor, satire, even offensive stuff to make his point.
He's a master at getting a rise out of people, challenging what we think we know, showing what he sees as hypocrisy, and saying we need to be free and responsible for ourselves.
And even though he uses humor and exaggeration, he does make you think about ideology, social justice, and that whole balance between being free and being responsible to society.
It's like Avalon sees this liberal ruin thing going beyond like politics and social justice. Like it's messing with our stories, the things we grow up with.
You mean those classic Christmas stories he talks about, like Rudolph and Baby, it's cold outside?
Exactly. He takes those stories, ones we all love, and uses them to show how he thinks being politically correct can like twist things, make them all bland and safe.
He's joking about how Rudolph is suddenly a problem because of bullying, right?
Yeah.
And then says, baby, it's cold outside. Is like promoting rape culture or something.
Yeah, it's funny, but he's making a point. You can't just look at old stuff with today's values and get offended, right? Gotta respect the art, even if it reflects different times.
So it's like, don't overthink everything. Don't be so sensitive, or you'll just ruin the fun.
Right. A lot of people feel that way, you know, like political correctness is out of control and we can't even enjoy anything anymore.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. What's the big takeaway from all this liberals ruin everything stuff?
Avalon's definitely pushing buttons, you know. He's out there, and that's kind of the point. He makes you think, makes you realize there are other ways of looking at things, even if you don't agree.
He's saying that liberal ideas are everywhere, almost like a religion, and it's shutting down anyone who disagrees. Says it's hurting traditional values and messing things up in all parts of life.
And there are people out there who feel the same way, you know? They feel lost, like everything's changing too fast and they don't fit in.
But we got to remember, he simplifies things a lot. Uses generalizations, makes fun of people to dismiss them. Got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, Avalon's not always fair or subtle, but he gets you talking, makes you think about things from a different angle, even if it makes you uncomfortable.
This deep dive has been, well, a lot. We laughed, we got mad, and we definitely thought about some stuff. We went through his main arguments, saw how he uses language to persuade, and really considered what it all means.
So as you go back to your daily life, all this crazy stuff we deal with, remember there are different opinions out there. Think critically about what you hear and see and talk to each other, even if you disagree.
And hey, don't forget to laugh along the way. Like Avalon shows us, even serious stuff can use a bit of humor, you know? Makes it all a little easier to handle.